Now we need to start this off by making our gummy mixture. So into a bowl, I'm going to place in, for this particular mold, it's just over 4 cups of water. And so we can get our gummy mixture, we need to use some gelatine. And to get the gummy consistency, we want to use 2 tablespoons per cup. So I'm going to use 8 tablespoons for this particular recipe. And just simply let that sit there for about 10 minutes just to give a chance for all that gelatine to soften up. Because in that time it's just going to soak in all the water. Okay, so it's had a chance to soften up now. So now we're going to add in some flavouring. Now you can choose any flavour that you like, preferably a clear one. Personally I'm going to go with some Peppermint Essence. Now this is pretty strong, I'm only going to put in about 8 teaspoons worth. And give it a good whisk to combine. If you find that your gelatine has come up a bit lumpy, as it is here, it's soaked up all the water, but it's still slightly lumpy. It's not as smooth as I'd like it. I'm just going to place it into the microwave for about a minute or 2, and that'll just help liquefy the rest of the gelatine. Now while it's in the microwave, I'm going to use 2 different types of silvers here. So the first one's a dark metallic silver, because Carbonite does sort of look metallic, you know, looking like silverish. And a lot of this one's going to settle to the bottom, so I'm also going to add some regular silver. And that'll just help make the whole thing more uniform in colour. So I've done it just with the one, it didn't turn out as well, did it with just the other. Still didn't turn out as well, but when I experimented, because no one's ever done this before, just by using both of them, it turned out so much better. So these are the 2 colours I recommend the most. So I had it in the microwave for about a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And as you can see, it is a nice liquid and it's no longer lumpy. So all we have to do now is place in our colours. So I'm going to start with a metallic, and our silver. And I'm using quite a bit because, well, this is a large mould, it's 4 cups. And give it a good stir to combine. Also, as an additional bit of information too, make sure you only get the water-based food colouring. If you use the oil-based, well obviously it's just not going to mix with the water. And now we're going to use our Han Solo in Carbonite mould. Now I was able to pick this up at my local comic book shop, but I've also searched online, so they're actually pretty easy to make. Indentation here of Han Solo, and as you can see it's all nicely supported with the extra ridges. So it's a nice silicone mould, so it's going to work out perfectly. So what we have to do now is just carefully pour your mixture into the mould. Okay, so once done, we're going to place this into the fridge for, say, a good 4 to 5 hours to completely set. And there we have our very yummy, very gummy Han Solo in Carbonite. Now this is an absolute must for any Star Wars fan. And for a true Star Wars fan with the movie coming up, there's going to be some marathons before. So if you're looking for that perfect dessert or perfect side treat for your friends when you're going through this huge marathon before the movie, this is absolutely perfect. And when you and your friends get stuck into this during a Star Wars movie marathon, you'll think this Han Solo in Carbonite tastes simply delish. Now for the first stage, I'm going to use some vanilla cake mix. Now this is a pre-bought cake mix that I've just added the simple ingredients of butter, egg and milk. Now this cake is more about design than recipe, so feel free to make your own, but for this particular one, pre-bought is fine. So this is actually for the Yoda section of the cake. So once it's all completely mixed through, as Yoda's relatively green, I'm going to add some green food colouring. Still a little bit of time, but you're going to need a bit, so you're going to need about a teaspoon, between a teaspoon to a tablespoon worth of green food colouring. So just keep on adding a little bit at a time until you get to that desired shade. And next I have a shallow lined baking tray that I've lined with non-stick baking paper, and I've given an additional grease on top of the non-stick baking paper. So it's just a simple matter of pouring our mixture into our baking tray and just make sure it's all nice and even. And it's just a simple matter of following the cake instructions. For this, it's 40 minutes in a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so our first cake is out of the oven and it is completely cooled down. And now for the next step, which is going to make our Yoda. Now I'm going to use a Yoda cooking cutter. I picked this up on eBay, they're very easy to find and they're also very cheap too. But you can also make your own. It's basically just a piece of metal that's been shaped into the shape of a Yoda head. Or if you feel confident in cutting it out yourself, without this, go for it, give it a go. So we're just going to start cutting out our Yoda shapes. Now you've been asking for them and I delivered, so please check out toddskitchen.com for my new and exciting Todd's Kitchen branded coffee mugs. And just make as many as you possibly can, just so there's no risk of coming up short. Next I have a loaf cake pan that I've also greased and lined. And I've also made up another packet of our vanilla cake mix. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit just on the bottom. We want just enough to cover the bottom, not too much. Evenly spread it out. And once that's spread out, we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 5 to 10 minutes, just until it just starts to turn a little bit solid, and this will give us a base on which to rest our Yoda heads on. Okay, so as you can see, it has now just risen slightly. So you don't want it completely cooked, otherwise you're going to overdo the mix. Now, as a little bit of extra, it's like, it sort of works like a bit of a glue, but it also gets some of the bottom filled up as well. I'm just going to add a very thin layer, just on top in the middle. Then we're just simply going to grab our Yoda heads and start positioning them just in the middle. Now notice the ears are pointing up or down. You want them pointing up, which is how Yoda's ears are supposed to be. So just make sure you put them the right way, of course. Now once you're positioned with the Yoda heads, simply going to fill it up with the rest of our cake mix. Just start with the sides first so you can get under those ears, just to fill up those gaps. And just work over the top after that. Now depending on the size of the cake pan, don't be afraid to make up 2 packets of extra cake mix. So you may want to use 1.5 packets, but again that depends on the size of the pan that you're using. Me personally, I'm using about 1.25. But if you're going to use a bigger pan, well, I'd recommend 1.5. Okay, so we're going to place this back in the oven. Now the packet will say 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but it'll probably only take about half an hour considering the middle is already cooked. But just check it after about half an hour, then check it every say 2 minutes afterwards. Once you touch it on the sides and the middle, it springs back, that means it's ready. Now our cakes have plenty of time to cool down, so as a final step, I have some ready-made frosting that I've just brought from the shops, and it's a vanilla flavour. And what I've done is I've just coloured it in blue, which represents the Rebel Alliance or the light side of the Force. So we're just going to decorate the outside of our cake in our blue frosting. So all we have to do now is just slice it open. And there we have our Yoda. Now of course I'll admit it doesn't look extremely like Yoda, but it's got the general shape and outline. And again, you don't have to stick to this one type of shape. You can choose any type of shape that you like. You want to make a love heart for your special someone? That's so easy to do as well. And just by following these simple directions, you can get the pattern as close to the middle as possible. But no matter what, when you serve one of these Star Wars cakes up, or one of your choice, they're still going to taste simply delish. Now we're going to start by using some cocoa butter. Now you should be able to find this online, or you should be able to also find it in any good health store. Now don't get this mixed up with regular butter that you put on your bread, because they're nothing alike. This is actually the oil extracted from the cocoa bean, which obviously has nothing to do with regular household table butter whatsoever. I have a pot on the stove on a medium heat. So to that I'm going to add in 100 grams of our cocoa butter, and we're just going to let that melt down over the medium heat. It kind of acts like a shortening. It stays hard when it's cold or at room temperature, but it obviously melts down when it's warm. Now I've just taken it off the heat and I've just let it cool down just for a couple of minutes. So now we're going to sift in 2/3 of a cup of icing or powdered sugar. And while we're sifting that through, we're going to continuously whisk it through. Now once that's all mixed through, we're going to sift in a tablespoon of milk powder. Now finally to that, I'm going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and to enhance the flavour, a pinch of salt. And just simply give it a good mix through. Now for the mould, I have some Millennium Falcon molds here. I just picked these up from my local comic book shop, but they're also very easy to find online. They're very stable on the bottom, and they're made out of silicone, so you can easily remove the chocolate from the mold. So it really is just a simple matter of pouring our chocolate mixture into our molds. Okay, so all we have to do now is just simply place these into the fridge for a good couple of hours to completely set. Now I've just taken them out of the fridge, so you just have to simply pop them out of the mold. Now lastly, I just have some black food colouring and a paintbrush. So we're just going to carefully paint the exhaust ports in the back just to give it a little more of a realistic look. And there we have our white chocolate Millennium Falcon. Now I'm a massive Star Wars fan, I really can't wait for the movie to come out, so this is going to be a perfect treat to have during the movie. As long as of course it's in moderation and you share it with some friends. So if you're a massive Star Wars fan like me, you just have to make this white chocolate Millennium Falcon. Because when you outrun an Imperial Star Destroyer with one of these babies, they're going to taste simply delish.